It's football's ultimate underdog story. Set in a time with very different perils to the ones we face today, it's a tale of liberation and heroism, trailblazers and pioneers, of setbacks and revival. Since modern-day football began, women have been playing it. When the fog of war descended on Europe in 1914 and men left to fight for king and country, Britain's munition factories were short-staffed and women filled the void. Albeit on half the pay of their male counterparts, this new line of work meant more social and economic freedom for women than ever before. And almost every factory from across the country set up a ladies' football team. But of all the teams in the land, it was a team from Preston that would take the country by storm.
One of the most famous teams, and certainly a team that wanted to be known as the world's greatest during World War I, was called the Dick, Kerr Ladies. Dick Kerr's factory already had a men's team, but they had the idea then to form a women's team and to ask Preston North End to play on their ground. What male professional clubs did was give the women access to their pitches, to stadia, and to stage large spectacular games. They always played to raise large funds for charities, often wounded soldiers. It was very much part of keeping up morale and women doing their part on the home front.
In the post-war era, the women's game continued to thrive. The Dick Kerrs gained national fame for their exploits, and audiences flocked to see the stars of their day, such as teenage prodigy Lily Parr, including 53,000 packed into Goodison Park, and 15,000 more said to be locked outside. But just as the popularity of the women's game was soaring, a devastating setback. In December 1921, the Football Association banned women playing on any ground affiliated to the FA, voting that the game of football was unsuitable for females. It would be a ban that would last until 1971.
The governing body at the time thought it was a sport that was not healthy for females, and subsequently, as a result of that, a ban was implemented which lasted 50 years. And so we're actually, in essence, 50 years behind where we could have been, but we'll never know.
Obviously the 50-year ban is probably the biggest story that has affected the sport. A lot of people don't even know that that even happened. So people are looking at women's football and men's football now, and they're trying to compare it, and I'm like, okay, well, but minus that 50 years, and they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, 50 years is huge, you know, that's a few generations of people's football careers.
It's such a shame that there was such a long period of time, considering how big it was then, how much that there was clearly an appetite for women's football back then. It was banned for so long, and you just think we've missed out on all of those young players wanting to play, those young girls that clearly watched the Dick Kerrs Ladies and thought, wow, that's exactly what I would love to do. And then suddenly they were told that it wasn't right for women to play football. It wasn't feminine enough to, you know, for girls to play football. I think even now we're still trying to change some of those attitudes.
Because the women did not have access to large stadia and they couldn't charge people to enter grounds, they ended up playing on local parks and recreation centres. It just made the whole thing look unspectacular.
The thing for me is when I see the pictures from before the ban, and I'm just like, that's incredible. I played in my first FA Cup final when I was 17, and the picture from before that ban is better than the picture from that FA Cup final, which you're talking about 10 years ago. Like, how's that even possible?
Women are still being called names on social media and in person for expressing an interest in what is effectively kicking a ball about.
Certainly put some of my friends off, where they didn't want to be called those names, they didn't want to be called tomboy, they didn't want to be called geezer bird, whatever it was, because they played football. And that wasn't that long ago, where there was still people thinking football isn't for girls.
Lily Parr was one of the many women who had their budding careers cut short, But she and her fellow amateur players persevered, and the efforts of successive trailblazers like her paved the way for the professional women's game we see today.
We were part-time footballers training 2 nights a week, not professional at all, training on a Tuesday and Thursday evening at Arsenal at Highbury in a ball court, and we were only allowed to use the facility when the men weren't there. It was very, very amateur. A lot of the players had jobs, so it was all about juggling your football career and working and trying to earn a living. I remember playing for Wembley Ladies, and I just saw Arsenal as the club that everybody wanted to play for because they were the best, they were the elite, they got everything. Arsenal have always really, really paved the way for the women's game.
I think that showed everybody else what was possible. If they can do it, why not? And it was something for other clubs perhaps to aspire to. And I think, you know, a lot of credit has to be given to Vic and their board and those people in charge at the time who made that decision to really invest in the women's game.
They dragged the other teams with them because they were so dominant and nobody could get anywhere near them. Other teams suddenly then were like, we have to put funding into our teams to be able to compete with Arsenal. And Chelsea did it. You know, we're now seeing Manchester City do it. You're now seeing their success from being a full-time athlete. You can see the standard has improved dramatically, and that's just because these players are playing full-time professional football now.
The women's game is going from strength to strength. Today, players are reaping the benefits of access to state-of-the-art facilities, sports science, and a greater level of professionalism than ever before.
It's kind of scary to think where it's going to go from here. I think of Kelly Smith and what she went through, then, you know, my career's arguably had a better professionalism around it, and then it's just going to keep going and going. So it's exciting to think that these young kids from a young age are going to have so much given to them to make them be better, to be more successful, and for England to be more successful.
I remember in 2011 when actually somebody came to speak to us at England and spoke about this idea, the WSL. It was going to be a full-time professional league, and obviously it was the ideal of bringing in a lot of supporters. It was, you know, raising the standard of the game, hopefully getting more young girls interested in women's football, and making sure that we had a successful international side. I think when you look back to 2011 to now, you just think there's a mass of difference.
I think it really shone a light on the game, you know, a real light that people wanted to be part of because they could see the product on the pitch was getting better. The players looked more like athletes. The whole professionalisation, the standards, everything has just gone through the roof.
If it's not already now, in the next year or so, it will be the best league in the world because of the competitive nature of it. And they get good backing from the men's programmes now. They get to train full-time, you get all the best facilities, all the best doctors, physios, you get really looked after, and obviously there's more money involved in the game here now. There's more commercial interest and visibility. It's on TV now, so it's more viable for people to watch the games, and I think that's crucial.
Look at the calibre of players that has come over at the moment, the internationals that we've got over there, absolute superstars. They're wanting to come to our league and play.
The phrase in women's football across the globe is, I need to play in the English league at some point, because it's where everybody wants to be. If you imagine if anyone was to have a 50-year ban and then to come kind of out of the darkness and to do the things that we've done. We've got a professional league that everybody wants to be part of. We've got an England national team set up who, for the past 3 consecutive tournaments, are making semi-finals. We're at a high-performing level, both domestically and internationally, and to have come from nothing and to almost be at the very peak of the game and to push the kind of ceiling on women's football. Yeah, I think we probably do deserve a bit of a pat on the back.
In many ways, the history of women's football is a very contemporary story. It's about young women with modern ideas who want to seek their opportunities in life. These women have been criticised, maligned, banned, but they love their football so much that none of that actually matters. And it's a real passion for the sport. And if we can't recognise that wish for an opportunity and that passion for football, then we probably can't call ourselves fans of football.